Hi, I'm John, founder of Essence, facilitator, musician, podcaster, and author of children's books. I guide people towards living their essence through one-on-one coaching journeys, group coaching programs, and many free offerings such as this podcast. If you want to go on a deep dive towards living your essence, I invite you to go to my website and book a free discovery call. And then we can explore many ways how you can live your unique essence. And now, let's jump straight into today's podcast episode.
Tantra is like licking honey off a razor blade. It's very sweet, but it's also very dangerous. So the promise within Tantric Buddhism is that within one single human lifetime, we can attain full awakening, or at least transform profoundly, learn very, very quickly, whereas in other Buddhist schools, it takes many lifetimes. So if you want to get to the top of the mountain, you don't walk around, circumambulate, but you go the cliff right up. Yeah. So if you don't have good guidance and you fall, then you crash. So it's very rewarding, but also dangerous.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Essence. In this episode, I have the great honor to have Nico Rönpagel with me. Nico is a good friend and colleague. He is the co-founder of WEVOLVE, an organization that supports other organizations in their processes of cultural transformation and leadership. He is truly a human being with a wide range of experiences and backgrounds. He has a background in science, art, conscious dance, over 20 years of meditation experience and practice, yoga experience. And in this episode, we will be speaking about the topic of what is essence? Does it actually exist? What are the different perspectives on essence that, for example, Buddhism has, Hinduism? We'll be speaking about Tantra and many more super interesting things. So I can imagine that this episode will inspire you. I hope you enjoy. As we always start these episodes, I also went on a little time travel with Nico before we started this recording on to the last time where Nico was connected to your essence. And I haven't heard it yet, and I'm really excited to hear the situation. When was it? And maybe you want to take us a little bit to this moment.
Yes. So when we did this little visualization journey just before hitting the record button 2-3 minutes ago, it was my mind. I watched my own mind looking for this and looking for those moments. When did I feel alive? Was it in dance, or was it on the bike, or was it the last time I cried? When was it? Or is it just sitting here right now and actually feeling the breath and not just, thinking about the past and the future? What came up, quite cliche perhaps, is a moment in my meditation this morning. So just a few hours ago, at the end of my meditation practice, there was a moment, or perhaps up to a minute, where I felt very present. Felt very empty, where nothing was in the way, where there was no direction that could exclude anything. So that was the moment that came up. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that and taking us to this little moment. And I know that you have been on a longer journey towards that included actually a lot of meditation. And I would love to know a little bit from you, like, when did this journey of yours start, the journey of meditation?
Yeah, it's so funny to hear you say, yeah, Nico, you did quite some meditation. It's always relative. Yeah. So yes, I've been meditating pretty much daily for 20 years now. And that might seem a lot. However, from the perspective of a mountain yogi in Nepal, I'm such a fool. I'm such a beginner. Yeah, I want to point that out as well, even to use the word meditation or to speak of these kind of practices. I try to be humble and acknowledge that I'm, at the very beginning in some regards. And at others, I'm already here. So when did the journey start, you asked? My contemplative journey started when I was 16. So I had some experiences at that age that just opened my mind and consciousness to a whole new dimension, where I realized or asked those questions through self-inquiry. What is this self? What is my relation to the world, to this body, to other beings? And that set me on a path. And then a few years later, when I moved out from home to go to university, age 19, I think, then I moved in together with a yoga teacher. And that was the kickoff to my more formal contemplative journey.
If I could travel back in time and meet this 16-year-old Nico, okay, I can try. Maybe you can teach me.
Yes.
If I would ask him, what is meditation for you? What do you imagine what would have been his response?
You would have asked, or if you ask now, the 16-year-old Nico, what is meditation?
Yeah.
He would have responded, I don't know. I'm exploring. I have no idea. That's why I explore. Tell me, what are your thoughts? What do you experience when you close your eyes? What are dreams to you? So it would have been questions. Maybe I would have said it's the state where there's no self, where there's no I, or the I is dissolved in everything, or everything is dissolved in the I. Yeah? So those experiences of the non-dual I had back then. Yes.
That's
and
beautiful.
That was the kickoff.
That was just the beginning, huh? And I like to watch these videos of, for example, 5 different people or 5 different levels of explaining harmony. How would a 10-year-old explain harmony, up to how would Herbie Hancock, the jazz pianist, explain harmony? And I'm wondering, now with 20 years of experience of meditation, what would you answer now? What is meditation for you?
And again, I would like to add the humility. So 20 years later, I haven't moved up 5 steps out of a, 10-step ladder. I have moved up 5 steps out of a 100-step ladder. Just to keep that in mind and to remind myself. Meditation, one way to look at meditation is that it is revealing a true nature of existence or experience. And because I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Vajrayana, a Tantric Buddhist practitioner, my emphasis is on emptiness. And we might speak about emptiness as well as a possible antidote, or not at all, to essence or essentialism. Yeah.
I find this super, super fascinating, and I can already sense that this conversation is going to be so rich as you've been gathering these different experiences throughout time and really delving into that. I know that you also teach meditation here in Berlin, and you have been teaching that for quite some time. And I was wondering, like, if someone is listening to this podcast who doesn't have any meditation, who would say about himself or herself that he or she doesn't have any meditation experience, um, what would you say is the connection between meditation and essence in a very simple way?
I'm completely overwhelmed to answer that question. Absolutely overwhelmed. Perhaps it would be meditation brings you to a place where you notice there is no essence. Yeah. Meditation is the experience that there is no essence, and yet there is full presence. Perhaps something along those lines.
And does it relate or connect? Yeah.
And I would like to add, so these are higher states of meditation. This is not mindfulness. Yeah. And when we start with what, we call meditation in the everyday, we often mean focusing attention, for example, or increasing our awareness of the self and perception. So the idea of mindfulness. Mindfulness is more about understanding the self. Like, really, what am I thinking? To uncover all these layers that we are holding, to uncover the layers of bodily perception, to become susceptible to more and more subtle experiences through mindfulness. That is mindfulness. And meditation is not, I understand myself better, but I let go of the self, or I transcend the self. So these are different directions. So when we speak about meditation in the everyday, I would rather say, first of all, it's learning to listen deeply, and to first notice without rejecting the loud voices in the mind, the body, the heart. And then through practice, through listening compassionately, we learn to listen to the more subtle voices and subtle sensations. And there's no limit to it. Those who have sat in, for example, a 10-day Vipassana retreat, where you sit for many hours each day and you just listen to the first days, you just sense your breathing, and then you listen to physical sensations. It becomes more subtle and more subtle and more subtle. And now imagine there are some practitioners who do this day in and day out for years. So there's no limit to it. However, meditation might be something utterly different. There are many different systems how we can look at or understand meditation. I would like to add one that is more from the yogic perspective. Yeah,
please. Yeah,
the Hindu perspective or the yogic perspective. Patanjali, he, if it was a single person at all, wrote down a system of yoga. Some say it was 3,000 years ago, others say 2,000, some say much longer or a little younger. And there's an 8-limbed path of yoga, Ashtanga yoga. And these 8 limbs, they culminate in more and more subtle experiences all the way to an awakened state. So let me just briefly mention these 8 steps, because one of them is meditation. So first there's the yama and the niyama, which is the ethical or moral conduct. How do I behave toward myself and toward others? Then number 3 is the asana practice. That's the physical yoga that we see in yoga studios. And then is pranayama as the 4th, which is working with prana, the energy, the breath. Then comes pratyahara, which is withdrawing the senses. Then the 6th one is pratyahara dharana. Dharana then is concentration. And then number 7 is dhyan, meditation. And then comes samadhi. So one teacher I spoke with once said, meditation is a very advanced state in that system. Even concentration, dharana, the one that comes before, means that you can roughly for 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, and your mind doesn't wander off at all, not a single time. And meditation comes after that. So when we use the term meditation, it's always like, oh, what do we mean by that? Sitting on a mat and just watching our mind, how crazy it is? Yeah, could be. Could be.
Yeah, and for everyone who has already tried sitting and just observing his or her thoughts or bodily sensations, might have had the experience that trying to focus for 20 minutes on just one thing is very, very, very difficult. Even just 30
For
seconds might be
20
a huge
minutes, John,
challenge.
it's very difficult for more than 5 seconds. It's very difficult for more than 10 seconds to really hold a thought for the untrained mind. Yes.
And what would you say, like for someone who is not yet on stage number 8, someone who is starting out,
Yeah.
what is maybe the benefit in this listening? You called it listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, I invite you to click follow. Your single click can contribute to inspiring more and more people. I also invite you to go to my website and download my free 9 Ways to Live Your Essence guide. All the information you find in the description. So now let's continue with today's episode.
It is about self-knowledge. It's Plato. It's know thyself. Yeah. It's about understanding the world, understanding this existence. And for some people, the benefit could ultimately be stress reduction or mental health, or finding out why are things triggering me the way they do, or catching me before I do something unhealthy, a certain pattern. So the benefits can be on those quite pragmatic and measurable levels. And then to others, it's more on a philosophical level, or others want to create overall well-being or health or peace in their life. And others say, that's just the intuition. I want to learn to relate more compassionately with the world and existence. That might be the next level. So it depends on the motivation. And then what is also very important is that each meditative practice has very different effects. So even though the research has started to look into mindfulness and meditation for 40 years now, and especially since about 2005 or so, there has been an explosion in academic research, it is still in its very early stages. So researchers are still trying to understand which type of meditation for which type of person has which type of effect. It's a little bit like food. You can dissect a capsicum and say, yeah, very healthy, but well, you give it to one person or give it to another person. Can have someone might be allergic to it. So yes, the different meditative practices have very different results. Some help you focus, some help you relax, some help you be more compassionate, for example.
Yeah, and for those who don't know you yet, you have also a background in academia and research with a PhD. So I was wondering if someone might ask himself, like, how is it possible to go on, do meditation retreats, have a deep meditative practice, and be coming from a background of science? How do those two fit together? Aren't they completely different worlds?
I would perhaps say there are different levels of looking at the world, or different layers of looking at the world. Both are true. Yeah? Even a materialist worldview with the existing paradigms and with the existing laws, they make completely sense. So if I have my cup of water here, yeah, and if I drop the water, then the cup will break. If I drop the cup, it's quite predictable. And for someone who is, and then on a more quantum level, I may say, well, nothing breaks, just the order of energy changes. And someone who has a certain spiritual worldview might say, well, there was never a cup, or who is experiencing that the cup is falling, or who dropped the cup. So yeah, there are different realities. Yeah, relative reality, absolute reality, we may call them, and they all have their independent value, and they're not in competition with each other.
And you also mentioned that you have this, that you call yourself like a Tantric Buddhist. How does a Tantric Buddhist perspective, well, what is that on this topic? Like science, spirituality, and this specific Tantric Buddhism perspective?
So Tantric Buddhism is Tibetan Buddhism. Buddhism has three major branches or vehicles. One is the original Buddhism that was from 2,500 years ago all the way up until today. Is more where you are a solo practitioner, monk style, the Vipassana. And the second one, the Mahayana, which emerged almost 800 years later, was more about compassion at the center, at the heart of practice. So not just for myself, but for the well-being or awakening of all beings. And then there is Tantric Buddhism, which is Tibetan Buddhism. So the principle of Tantra is that everything that we experience becomes part of the path. So becomes a vehicle for generating wisdom. That's the basic principle of Tantra. So nothing is rejected as being unworthy, impure. So if you work with your trauma, okay, that's where the gold is. Yeah, that's where the opening of the heart, the cultivation of compassion is possible. And that is also why in some very few tantric approaches, sexuality, for example, is not rejected. Yeah, because it can become part of the path. If you're a really angry person, then okay, work with the energy of anger. So that's your gem, transform that. Moreover, in Tantric Buddhism, there is always a combination of wisdom and method, or of the feminine and the masculine. Yeah, that's one of the ideas we also have of Tantra. Oh, it's somehow bringing together these different energies or polarities, and they create a higher, new order whole. So what is this wisdom and method thing? Yeah. So we could say that method is actually the doing. Yeah, is the more masculine, is the compassion, is how we behave, is all the practices, is maybe even the experience of feeling alive, is doing sport and going for a run, and the way I speak, and doing rituals, of course, in a more spiritual setting. And the feminine, the wisdom, is an understanding of emptiness, so that nothing has an immanent existence. Or we could say that there is no essence. So these two in Tantra need to go together. So giving your best, but without attachment. That's another translation. Like doing all these practices, but understanding, oh, it's empty. So it has no existence on its own. Yeah, everything is impermanent. Like giving your best as if it was permanent, but being so detached from things as if it is impermanent.
That sounds like quite a challenge.
Yes, yes, that's why there's a tantric path. To take everything very, very seriously, and at the same time be completely detached from it. Yeah, so it's the lightness, perhaps, John, that we can bring to life, the lightness that allows us to go even deeper and to feel even deeper. So we are shattered in pain or in sadness. If we know, oh, there is this sadness and it is absolutely real, yeah, then that can create suffering, yeah, or can be even more difficult. But if we know, oh, there is this experience of pain, it's absolutely there, 100%. I can feel it in the cell of my body. And I know at the same time, oh, it's going to change. It's impermanent. This is not who I really am. So it's like creating an even larger container or a space, a consciousness or an awareness that is just spacious. Everything happens in space. And that gives more freedom to things to change and for us to possibly feel deeper even. So challenging, but maybe on the other hand, it makes things less challenging.
It's beautiful. I really love this approach, and for me, it's super interesting also to learn about more about the world of Tantra. And I guess that some of the people listening or watching this have not had any experience in this world. Are like, "Oh, okay, that sounds interesting. I thought Tantra was all about getting laid, but it's not." So I would love to hear a little bit more about what Tantra is like, and which kind of contexts you apply the Tantric Buddhism mind heart set. How do you see the world being a Tantric practitioner?
So of course there is the whole neo-tantra, this umbrella term that is mainly about sexuality and sensuality and working with energies and subtle energies. Yeah, that has its own right. There's a reason why it's so popular or has become so popular in the past 50 or so years. Yeah. However, that may be quite different from some original tantric paths. So there's Tantra in Hinduism and there's then Tantra in Buddhism. The Tantra in Buddhism grew out of the Hindu Tantra and was merged with Buddhism. And I find it very compelling because it brings the idea of emptiness in there and the Buddhist philosophy of awakening, how it is understood there, or rather enlightenment.
So it's like Tantra is a path to awakening and enlightenment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, if we look at India, how Tantra emerged, actually emerged as a revolution against the rigid religious system. So there were these the Brahmins, and there were the priests, and for like hundreds or thousands of years they were telling everyone what to do, and they were the ones being able to read the scriptures and do the ceremonies, and they were very rigid. Yeah, very classical caste system. And then when Tantra emerged, I'm not sure, maybe around the years 300, 400 AD, something along those lines, 500. In India, that was a big revolution because it was empowerment. It was about, it's about your own experience and everyone is equal. And even an untouchable, or women in particular. Yeah, it was the first time in the history of that religion, that continent, that women became a central force, because now they're needed. Women are often the ones initiating in Tantra. and guiding. So yeah, it was about freedom, about liberation, and not about sexual liberation, just about liberation from a system of oppression and rigidity. So that's the original idea of Tantra. And what is also distinct in Tantra within Buddhism from Theravada and Mahayana, these two earlier approaches, is that you work very closely with a teacher and within a lineage, and that it is necessary to have this very close relationship. So it's a lot about initiations and making vows that are different from monastic vows. So it's quite a secret technique. I heard someone say that Tantra is like licking honey off a razor blade.
Wow, what a
Tantra is
metaphor.
like
Yeah.
licking honey off a razor blade. It's very sweet, but it's also very dangerous. So the promise within Tantric Buddhism is that within one single human lifetime, we can attain full awakening, or at least transform profoundly, learn very, very quickly. Whereas in other Buddhist schools, it takes many lifetimes. So if you want to get to the top of the mountain, you don't walk around, circumambulate, but you go the cliff right up. Yeah. So if you don't have good guidance and you fall, then you crash. So it's very rewarding, but also dangerous.
It sounds super exciting. It sounds really, really interesting. And I was like, many people probably have not had this perspective before, and this actually this knowledge about Tantra as a path that emerged from a longing for revolution and a revolutionary act. Tantra as a revolutionary act. And I had this question in mind that I wanted to ask you. How could Tantra serve right now in our lifetime, in our societies, as an act of revolution?
It is about self-empowerment. Yeah. So not following the mainstream and the masses and the media pollution. Second, Tantra is about honoring shadow and not rejecting what is uncomfortable. So nowadays, individually and collectively, we are pushing, banning darkness. I don't know where it goes, John. I don't know where much of the collective anger, fear, and other suppressed experiences go. They are somewhere, and they do lead in our own lives or at the other end of the world to suffering and brutality. So Tantra also is about, honoring the sacredness of everything and realizing that everything is equally pure. Another main principle in Tantra is, which makes it a little bit different than yoga, is that in yoga you need to purify to get to this state. And in Tantra, the premise is we are already awake right now. Yeah, we are already made of light. Not only this body, but even this human consciousness itself. Yeah. So it's more recognizing what is already there, and seeing everyone and everything as equal could also help in our 21st century quarrels, where it's a lot about seeing differences, feeling superior. Oh.
And if someone were to say, yes, that sounds good, I want to start this path, what is the beginning? You were speaking about having a teacher, a close relationship to that. Like if someone is like, yes, I want this, I want to learn this, I want to grow, I want to integrate this, how could people start?
I don't even know if I would recommend for anyone to start this. Because it is licking honey off a razor blade. So in in these lineages, they say if there's the karmic predisposition for in this lifetime to encounter not only the Dharma, so the Buddhist teachings, but also the Vajrayana, the Tantric path, there must have been very clear past life experiences. So what is the motivation then? I would rather say, what is your motivation? Rather than, okay, here are the 5 next steps, or buy this book, or watch this video. There's so much on YouTube nowadays, amazing teachers, yeah, to look at authentic lamas, just typing Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism. There's so much. They're really good teachings, and then see where's resonance. And it's very important to align on the why. Yeah. So at the beginning of each meditation, of each tantric ritual, there's always the generation of compassion. So that's called bodhicitta. It's the awakened mind. It's always that all the merit of the practice is dedicated to all beings. Very, very important. Yeah. Tantric practices are never done for oneself. Or there needs to be an understanding that my own growth is everyone's growth, or my own awakening is equal to everyone's awakening. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say go to YouTube.
I found it so interesting.
See if life takes you somewhere. Be open.
Like for the resonance, you were mentioning that as well. And I found it so interesting what you said about that in Tantra, it's about the balance, like the equality between all different qualities and energies. And I like there are these different concepts and approaches. One is, for example, shadow work, also being like, okay, let's work with our shadows, let's integrate them, seeing all the qualities inside of them, in our persona, in our shadow as well. There's this approach of nonviolent communication, saying all feelings have a function. There's no better feelings or worse feelings. Mm-hmm. And it seems that the tantric approach has like a similar intention in this very specific idea of energies and qualities are equal. And I was wondering what sets it apart. Like, why is it especially appealing to some people to follow this specific path of growth, of getting to know themselves?
Because it's sweet as honey, John.
What makes it so sweet for you?
It's the karmic disposition. So it took me way over 15 years of exploring all kinds of practices, from yogic lineages to shamanic work to, I did my first Vipassana 17 years ago. Yeah. So a bit of Buddhism, but to actually come into touch with Tantric Buddhism was not until 2-3 years ago, and it goes very, very fast. So that's why I found my home now, after almost 20 years of spiritual search. And it's definitely not everyone's. You have the mandalas, and you have the deities, and you have the golden statues, and it's very complex to have sadhanas or spiritual practices where you visualize very intricate mandalas or deities and energies, and it's definitely different from Zen Buddhism, for example, which is the most simple, reduced, clean way of transcending or emptying the self, or dropping into essence, if we understand essence as empty awareness.
Yeah, and as this podcast is exactly about this, like essence, a journey to self. I'm so curious. You were saying in a little bit different words that you have like 20 years of trying to find of getting to know yourself, finding a home within yourself, understanding yourself. So this journey to self, which would you say were the approaches or angles that supported you most in getting to know your essence, or understanding that there is maybe actually no essence at all? Like in these 20 years of search and practice, which were the approaches that were most supportive for you and interesting, exciting for you?
Conscious dance.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious dance was a big player. So during my PhD in Australia, those 5 years, I did do conscious dance twice a week, 5 rhythms. So conscious dance means you're barefoot, there's no talking on the dance floor, and you drop deeply into your body and you move intuitively. You move as if no one was watching, as they say, as if you were just by yourself on a lonely island, and you can dance your heart inside out. And you can do this collectively by creating a field of rawness. Yeah? So if I would use a type of essence that means authentic or truly alive, then I would say that some types of conscious dance have brought me closer to my essence and also supported me on my path of what's this body? How can I work with this body or as this body? Mm-hmm.
Beautiful,
that is one tiny stage.
Yeah, I would like to, always share with other people, and that for me it's so important. I've experienced it to be so important and so valuable to be able to follow my impulses, to listen to my inner impulses. And that could be like on a bodily level. How does my body want to move? But also working with sound and voice. Which sound wants to come out? Which melodies wants to come out? And this approach of conscious dance, I find it so beautiful as you described it as well. If it's 5 rhythms or another format of this conscious dance, just to be like, yeah, what is truly authentically inside in me right now? What actually wants to move? And there I see the a relationship and a connection between what you shared about not just repressing or not feeling certain emotions within ourselves, but actually to use them and move through them.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And at the same time, often what wants to move, John, are our patterns.
Right. Yeah.
So we can say, yes, there is an intuition and there's some experimentation and it needs extra courage to express this or that. And at the same time, it's often our past behavior that is replicated through whatever we do. So sticking to the field of dance or conscious dance, there are some types of conscious dances where it's about just going there and no guidance and just dance your heart out and have an amazing night. Yeah. And then there are other types of conscious dance where the teacher tries to inspire you to move what does not move. Yeah. So it's possible that I return to a dance, one of the former ones, so where everyone just goes and dances their own self, that I go again after 4 years not having been there. Same people are there, everyone dances still the same way. They have a great time, but it looks the same. Yeah. And then in these other classes with really good teachers or workshops I've been to, they really make you move what does not want to move, what is stuck, what is numb, what you don't even know exists, what you are afraid of. So there's a limit to intuition, what I try to say. Yeah? There's a limit to letting it flow. We need pushing, or we need support, or we need inspiration, or whatever it is, to work on these edges so that some more is coming into flow.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask as well, like, what would you say is the benefit of breaking your pattern while dancing. Why would someone do that?
To me, it is so natural to feel myself authentically and deeply and wanting to know more about the world. So not just feeling more alive or feeling more whole or wanting to express. To me, it's just the natural state of, I want to be real. I want to be deep. I don't necessarily want to feel good, but I want to feel deep. It's just my constitution to trying to look behind things, to lift the curtain. And again, it is often our shadows and our unprocessed stuff. Trauma is a big word. However, there is often our traumas that function like energy blockages in our system. And they take a lot of energy away, a lot of, it's like 10 systems on the computer running in the background, trying to regulate and suppress and somehow accommodate. And that means we cannot really be present with others. We cannot really share our energy. We often unconsciously create suffering within our own lives and others. So the more, I believe, the more we feel about ourselves, in ourselves through these bodies, the more we can feel the world, the more compassionate we are with us, the more compassionate we are with the world. So very simple. That's why I believe it's important to reclaim what is already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I also see it in this way that I believe that when we are born, our essence just shows itself like naturally, and then throughout our life, we have gathered certain experiences which create blockages and prevent this from flowing naturally and authentically. And then I see this.
Feel?
Yeah. Go ahead. What was your question?
When you say everyone is born or babies are born with an essence or their essence, to you, do you feel that every baby, every newborn has the same essence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe
or is there personality in essence?
Yes, it's a fascinating question. Like I believe that's my spiritual view currently of everything is that I believe that there's one consciousness which expresses itself through various shapes and forms. That could be plants, it could be animals, human beings, and also within us human beings, I believe it's this one bigger essence, this one big consciousness that expresses itself in various flavors. So I see that all of us, we have a specific flavor shaped maybe by the past experiences of ourselves, of our family system where we grew up, where our family grew up, and so on and so forth. But I believe it all comes from the same source. I think that's how I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a quite Hindu approach, I'd say. So it's like that Brahma, is this one consciousness thing, yeah, and it expresses itself through everything, yeah, or in Tantric Shaivism, yeah, where you would have this as well. So it's the consciousness itself experiencing itself through all shapes, through all multi-trillion gazillion perspectives that exists, from a blade of grass to human beings to clouds to any shape.
Yeah, and I think that that is natural when we come
Yeah,
into
I
the world, and
sometimes,
then yeah, getting shaped by certain experiences, we I think we lose access to certain ranges, to certain qualities of the human experience, and then it's about also reintegrating that. And some might be due to trauma, as you were sharing. So I also believe that if we see the world as a rainbow of colors, then through experiences we might lose contact to blue or we might lose contact to green. And then it's about, okay, how can I depict and experience this inside of myself to actually feel compassion for the entire world, for the entire human experience on the outside, but first getting access on the inside. That's what I also wanted to share about how I often see a path, or why it is also important to break patterns, to not be just running on yellow and red, but also being able to connect to these other qualities of human experience.
yeah, it does open even more philosophical and speculative questions. Like, why am I not, or is even a newborn conditioned, or cannot see the yellow, or too much of the blue? So, yeah, there are these different descriptive frameworks. We could say, oh, it's the parent's DNA, and it's even the time, the 40 weeks in the womb are actually shaping babies very, very much. And a more transcendental or Buddhist view would say, well, they also bring a lot of karma, yeah, even before they enter the womb, so to speak.
Would that be like the Tantric Buddhism perspective on that as well? Being like, okay, they, um, in this case, babies come with karma to the world.
Oh yeah, that would be that perspective. So within Buddhism, we sometimes have this idea, oh, I had a 10 or 20 or 1,000 or 10,000 past lives, be it as humans or others. It's, of course, much more difficult because, first of all, there's not this linear time that we have in our current understanding through human consciousness. But it's also that there are according to a sutras or Buddhists saying we all have had more reincarnations than there are grains of sand on this planet. This is why they say we have been in each other's arms and relationships, in all of them. Everyone has been your father and mother, lover or child, and because there are trillions and trillions, yeah, of past lives, so to speak. And yes, we do bring, according to those frameworks, we do bring those karmic traces that are like clouds or accumulations of these experiences. And the more recent ones are more dominant. Yeah. And the difference, as we spoke about yoga and Hindu and Tantric and Buddhist, so the difference is that in Hinduism there is an essence, there's a soul, yeah, there's an Atma, and in Buddhism there is no soul. Yeah, that's the difference between, also for those listening who might not know what's the same, what's the difference. Well, that's what Buddha had Hindu teachers, and that's what made it apart. He said, no, there is no essence. There's, at least in the sense of, there's no soul.
That is so fascinating. I actually didn't know that about this different worldviews on this specific topic of essence. So I'm actually really curious if ever in the coming future there will be Buddhists coming to the workshops and coaching journeys on essence, that are actually like, hey, that doesn't even exist. It doesn't make sense to be here. I'm curious.
Yeah. I recently listened to an interview with a researcher who looks at the adverse effects of meditation.
Mhm.
And she also teaches, I think it's at Brown University, so top university, and they teach courses She's a psychologist, and it's an interdisciplinary course on, neuroscience, etc. They teach there's no self. There's this idea of self does not make sense whatsoever. So even from within materialist frameworks, psychologists, neuroscientists, they increasingly challenge this notion of there being a self rather than an experience that includes a self, or an experience where we add the self, or where we use experience to sustain the idea of self.
Listening to you right now, I actually have also this strong longing for another podcast episode, an entire one on psychedelics, because I think that can be interestingly connected as well. The question of essence, psychedelics, and self, transcending yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And also actually connected with trauma.
We are in this psychedelic revolution. That means there has been research on psychedelics in the 70s, and then it was shut down by the US government, and there was pretty much a ban worldwide on researching psychedelics. And nowadays, for the past 10 years or so, we know, holy moly, we have neglected this research for 40, 50 years. And now the top universities and centers around the world are looking into research, mainly for therapeutic reasons, etc. But it also does raise some questions on what is the self.
Mm-hmm.
Because people make profoundly different experiences where, for example, there's this thing called ego death. So the death of the sense of self, the dissolution of the self, which is the key thing we dread when we die, our fear of death. And I had dreams at night where I was either Nico or I was another person, and it came to the moment of dying, like jumping off a cliff, or knowing I would die, or I would see someone else die. And it shows me then how deep the fear is of dying, even if I'm in a dream and I realize it's a dream and I should just jump off the cliff. In Tantric Buddhism, in sleep and dream yoga, there are these practices where when you become a really stable lucid dreamer, meaning you are aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming without waking up, and you learn to control your dreams, that then you also, as one of the practices you do, is you get, for example, intentionally eaten by dangerous animals. So you kill yourself in dream without waking up, and you realize, it continues. There's a continuation of consciousness. Even if it's very painful, even in dreams, if someone cuts off your arm, it's still very, very, very painful, depending on the type of dream. So you can practice dying in dreams. Do
you do that?
Well, I just mentioned that I noticed there's so much fear. So no, I have not managed that. That takes even longer. So I've been engaged with dreams for 15 years now. But this particular practice where you die again and again in dreams, and then maybe you realize, something continues. Something continues, but it has nothing to do with myself. It has nothing to do even with the sense of self. It has nothing to do with Nico, with this body. So the question of essence in Buddhism is unresolved. It's not a soul, not this type of essence, but there's something that is like a pure awareness, perhaps, that is just like space that remains, that we could call essence, even though Buddhists would not call it essence.
Wow, that is so fascinating. Like just in my mind, I was just going through all these different perspectives that we have just chosen in the last couple of minutes, speaking about essence of who would say what. Buddhists, do they believe there's an essence? There's no essence, there's no soul. In Hinduism, yes. Then we have a tantric approach. Then we have psychedelic approach. Then we have lucid dreaming. So it is so rich, and I actually feel deeply honored that all these different angles to somewhat are embodied by you. That you can take them and share these different perspectives with me and with everyone here. So I find this very beautiful and very rich, and I have the feeling that we could do one episode on each perspective.
Yeah. And I was also surprised how much I spoke. Yeah. Rather than I had questions all the time. And either I spoke, or when there was a break and I wanted to ask you something, John, you came up with another question. Inquiring. And it's this idea of inquiring, yeah, feeling more deeply, trying to understand, questioning, challenging, refining, that are itself what can bring us closer to essence. That is the method.
I have actually one more question.
And I feel we could have covered even more perspectives. Yeah.
Easily. And that's a good thing.
Sometimes there's an overlay in the audio, so please.
I feel that we are slowly coming to like a close for this episode, and I have a huge longing to do more episodes with you to be able to dive deep on all these individual perspectives. And now I wanted to ask you, now looking back on all these different things that we covered, what would you say? Why could it be interesting, important, enriching, beneficial for someone to listen to this episode? What would you say? Why could it be important or enriching, beneficial for someone to listen to this episode?
Perhaps it could be important to listen to this episode, to be inspired to let go of some ideas that are fixed, or to let go of some past experiences that have strengthened, solidified the sense of self and of essence, or the existence of essence. So I feel that in our episode here, we challenged, but playfully, and also seriously. Is there an essence? What is this essence thing? There's an experience. We want to feel deeply. We want to show up as full human beings and as compassionate human beings. And how can the search for essence help us in becoming more whole? So I feel we covered some inspirations here to reclaim, but also to let go. Some narratives.
Beautiful. Thank you for summarizing this. And I feel this conversation has been so rich, like really so rich. And I deeply hope that this can inspire the ones listening and looking at this right now to inquire for themselves, like, what is your path? What are you curious about? What do you want to learn about yourself? What do you want to unlearn? What do you want to let go? What do you want to integrate and claim for yourself? So, yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to you, Nico. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your vast range of experiences with the world. So thank you so much.
Amazing, John. I also greatly enjoyed this conversation, and I noticed how difficult it is for me to not go too deep, or to at least find ways that are not too abstract. Because in my mind, everything is clear or full of questions, but to articulate either what is clear or the questions is difficult, and I don't do often. So I thank you for the opportunity, for giving me a chance to articulate and inquire as we speak.
Very welcome. And the quest continues. So thank you everyone for sticking around. I'm looking forward to connecting with you in the next episode of Essence.